We got an interview last night with Laura Schuler-Donner, who is a producer in the X-Men film. She talked about Kevin Feige taking over the X-Men, what that means for the X-Men properties, and how we're likely not going to see Hugh Jackman as Wolverine anymore. Stay up to date about the nerdy things that you care about. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next episode. What's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Sorry this video is delayed. I was having computer problems this morning. It was really whack, but we're here. We're doing it now. Before we get into breaking down all this craziness that came out about the X-Men and the MCU, let's shout out Brad Silman, who got the nerd card question correct in the show from yesterday. Indeed, Crossbones is confirmed to be in Avengers Endgame. I'm excited to see what he does in that film, but you definitely know your stuff, so shout out to you, Brad, and we will do another nerd card question at the end of this video. So guys, in the middle of all of the Avengers and Endgame hype that was happening after the Super Bowl TV spot, we got a little interview with Laura Schuler-Donner talking about the X-Men and Wolverine in the MCU. So there was a lot of cool stuff in this interview, and this isn't even the final interview. There's actually more questions that are gonna come out and be published, I believe at Collider. That's where I read the article anyway. So let's rapid fire through some of the key points from this interview and talk about what they mean for the MCU, man. There's some really cool stuff in here. Number one, when she was asked about the X-Men projects that were in production like Gambit and X-Force, Laura explained that they are completely on hold, that pretty much the deal with Marvel Studios and Fox is finalized. So they're putting everything on hold and it's just kind of up to Disney now. That's something that gets repeated a lot in this interview. When talking about the future of the X-Men films after Apocalypse, she said she felt like the franchise needed to evolve. She said they had a ton of cool story ideas, but a lot of it revolved around X-Force and Cable, which I thought was really interesting that she named those properties. I mean, that just kind of shows that after Deadpool and Deadpool 2, that they were really gonna ramp up with the X-Force movie and start to build out that part of their universe, which would have been really good. I mean, much fresher than what we've been getting with the X-Men movies in the last couple of years. She also talked about the show Legion and how that was eventually gonna bleed into X-Statix, which just as a comic book fan is absolutely freaking amazing. It's a shame that this is gonna be the last season of Legion, and I would have loved to see X-Statix, but you never know. I mean, maybe they could work something like that out in the future. She also made a lot of references to the fact that this is a huge undertaking for Kevin Feige, that he's probably up all night thinking about how to make all of this work. She's just talking about how it's in his hands. And if you didn't know, Kevin Feige actually started as an intern for the Schuler-Donner company under Laura and was hired by him and worked on all of the X-Men films. So Feige sort of going back to his roots by having the X-Men once again. And beyond her just trusting him and kind of gushing about what an amazing job he's done with the MCU, she really talks about how this is a very challenging problem, something that Kevin is aware of, and he's probably straining himself to do it. Some of the pitfalls that she explained would probably come with this are the fact that you can only do so many comic book movies a year, the fact that people might be getting sick of X-Men films in general. I mean, they just have done the stories with Jean, Cyclops, Wolverine, the Professor, and Magneto. We've seen a lot of versions of that, so maybe that's an obstacle for the new MCU versions of these characters. She was asked directly about Hugh Jackman and explained that, like, yeah, he's just getting too old. It's really hard to put on all this muscle. He's kind of a skinny frame guy naturally, and he's just done, man. And a lot of people are running with this. They're like, oh, it's confirmed Hugh Jackman's done with Wolverine. Guys, he said he was done after Logan. I know that he could technically still come back, and I'm sure there's a part of him that wants to, but at the end of the day, Logan was a perfect swan song. In my opinion, if he didn't do a cameo in Deadpool 2, it really just kind of means that he's done forever. I mean, I kind of expected that, and that would have been passable for me because it would have been like, okay, that's pretty dope. Still, Logan is the last of him in canon, in my opinion, so I could have swallowed that pill, but I think, you know, Logan's it, and there's no more Hugh Jackman. We're going to get a new Wolverine. Okay, so the biggest takeaways for this and like what it actually means for the MCU, I think first of all, we can kind of glean that Kevin Feige is likely working on all of this stuff right now. Now, I know in interviews and things like that, he's talked about how, you know, until the ink was dry on the contract and, you know, he couldn't really focus on that, and he had been working on all of the MCU movies that they're coming out with anyways, which I'm sure is true, but at the end of the day, for Laura to be talking about how Kevin is like griping with this, you know, struggling with this, and I really think that indicates that she knows that he is working on it. I mean, they have a relationship together. As I said, she hired him. They're very fond of each other. And so I think this kind of indicates that Feige has probably been working on this problem for a while. I also think that her talking about how it's specifically hard because of, you know, the amount of movies that they're going to be putting out and the fact that the X-Men had been, you know, done many times already, that kind of indicates that perhaps those are things that Feige and her had spoken about. Now, that's obviously like a stretch. I don't know if they've actually talked about it, but I think it's pretty fair to say that as a producer to another producer, you know, that's clearly something you would just talk about as far as just from a position of your craft. Like, what do you do with this kind of a problem? We all know that like Feige's gonna figure it out. I mean, he's like the best that has ever done it, but it is kind of interesting that Laura is literally talking about those specific things as problems. I also found it really interesting that she talked about X-Force and Cable. Really cool if maybe that's the way that the MCU goes. Instead of going right to X-Men, we do some more X-Force and do it a little more comic booky. That could be really cool. But overall, guys, I think the big takeaways for the MCU are, you know, no Hugh Jackman, which I mean, let's be real, we kind of already knew that. It's gonna be really challenging for them to introduce the X-Men again, so maybe they're gonna focus on solo films. It's something that she talked about in the interview as well. And mainly that Feige's working on this problem, that he's aware of what he's gotta do, and he's, you know, pretty much got the toys back in the toy box, so it's, you know, this is his next big thing, and I think it's epic because what he's done so far is amazing. I can't wait to see what he does with these new characters. Also, and just like from my speculation with this thing, I really think they should introduce mutants and like some of the X-Men characters in already like ready to go MCU movies. A lot of people talk about Storm being in Black Panther 2. I think that would be brilliant. Perhaps introducing Namor, you know, having him show up in another movie. I think that's sort of the way you go. You introduce the mutant problem in the MCU. That allows you to introduce all this new IP and sort of inject new life into maybe some of your other franchises, and you don't have to just do X-Men right away. You don't have to do Charles and, you know, recruiting and Wolverine and all that. You can do other characters. But that's the news out there, guys. Laura Schuler Donner giving a great interview. It's not even the whole interview. There's still more to come from that. What do you guys think about this? I mean, are you taking this as a sign that Hugh Jackman's 100% done? What do you think about maybe X-Men movies coming back? You think they're gonna kind of stay away from the group X-Men movie and focus on solo pictures? Whatever you are thinking about this news, and if you've heard something else about it, let me know in the comment section below. All right, let's check that nerd card before we get out of here. I want to know, what year did the original X-Men movie come out? A lot of people say this changed comic book movies forever. What year was it that X-Men came out? As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.